Good afternoon and welcome to this Revolution session. I'm Steve Case and I want to welcome all of you. I understand more than 1,000 people registered for this seminar, so we're delighted by that. And we're going to have a great conversation with four great CEOs talking about reopening process in the food and hospitality sectors. The process of closing down these businesses and operating them during this difficult period of the last couple of months has certainly been a big challenge, but in some ways the reopening process and the reimagining process in terms of how businesses should change based on some of these new dynamics and some of these new trends is where a lot of the focus needs to be. And that's why Revolution is hosting the first of what we think will be several of these sessions. This one is focused particularly on the food and hospitality sectors. For those of you not familiar with Revolution, we started about 15 years ago. We've now invested over $1 billion in more than 100 companies in 30 different states across a variety of different sectors. And we have a Revolution Growth later stage fund. We have a Revolution Ventures kind of fund, as well as an earlier stage Rise the Rest seed fund. And we've invited companies from all those different funds to participate in the session, and some of them will also participate in future sessions. So a little bit of data just to kick this off. One of the Revolution-backed companies, the research company called Resonate. Two statistics I wanted to share. One is that according to recent research just completed about a week ago, only 28% of people believe they will dine out again this fall. So one point on food, they're reluctant to go back. They're a little nervous about going back. How companies deal with that to create a safer, more secure, more comfortable, more trusting relationship will be the key driver in terms of how quickly people go back. And similarly, on the travel side, 50% of people don't believe they'll travel, or at least travel won't get back to normal until sometime next year, 2021. So they're also reluctant to get on planes. Again, the process of reopening and rebuilding that trust is going to be critically important. So that's what this conversation is all about. To lead us through this conversation, we've asked Ron Klain, who was the co-founder of Revolution when we started 15 years ago, has been with us for most of those 15 years, although he did take a couple of short breaks. One of them was to work for President Obama as his Ebola czar 7 or 8 years ago. Took a 5-month leave of absence, did a great job there. He's now become, in addition to all the other things he's doing at Revolution, sort of our COVID czar. We've hosted now 5 sessions for our companies in terms of how to deal with this crisis. And we wanted to open this one up to the public so everybody could tune in. So Ron, why don't you take it from here and introduce our CEOs.
Great, thanks, Steve. Excited to be here hosting this conversation. And I'll introduce our participants when we get to each one of them. You know, at Revolution, we're really proud that so many of our portfolio companies have made contributions to help cope with this pandemic, sending support to healthcare workers, to workers on the front line, to families that have been impacted, and trying to continue to serve their communities as much as they can during this period of time. They're also thinking very thoughtfully about what reopening looks like. And we know reopening is hard. In some places it's controversial. We're not going to talk about what the right date to reopen is today. We're going to put that aside and focus on the hard work that the companies are doing to get ready for that date whenever it comes for their line of business, for their communities. We know that putting safety first is something we really stress at Revolution is going to be the right thing to do for employees, the right thing to do for customers, and it's going to be the right thing to do for businesses, because we think consumers are really going to put a high premium on that. And so to do that, it's going to require a lot of planning, a lot of thought, and changes in the way businesses work. And that's what we want to talk about today with 4 great leaders of companies in our portfolio. I want to bring in the first one of those right now, Brett Schulman, the CEO of Cava. Cava is one of the leading Mediterranean fast casual restaurants United States. It's up and down the East Coast, Southern California, Texas. In mid-March, Cava suspended the option to dine in all of its restaurants. It's still offering contactless delivery. That's how I get my pita sandwiches each day. It's also offering a pickup at the curbside, and also great credit to Brett. It's continuing to offer healthcare and other benefits to its workers, even though its physical locations are shut down that way. And it's donated up to 10,000 meals to families of frontline workers. So Brett, thanks for all that, and thanks for joining me for this conversation.
Yeah, Ron, thanks for hosting the discussion and having me.
So look, I enjoy getting my pita at home right now, but I live walking distance from one of your shut down stores. Tell me, when the time comes to reopen those units, what's going to be different? What will it, when I walk into a Cava, what will look different, and how will it work differently than it did before the COVID outbreak?
Yeah, and I think it's to Steve's comments and some of yours, it's about building that trust. And to start, we'll be taking a firmer stance than the local mandates. So going into the pandemic, we closed our dining rooms before we were required to. And as local jurisdictions allow the reopening of dining rooms, we're waiting at least 2 weeks, if not longer, once the restrictions are relaxed. We want to ensure our team members are fully prepared for any increased customer traffic in our restaurants as communities open back up. In the interim, as you pointed out, we've got several contactless channels that you can access your favorite bowl or pita or Mediterranean meal. And as for the guest experience, we really audited the entire customer journey, taking into consideration the diverse mindsets of our communities. We have we operate in 24 states, so it's a really broad spectrum. And at our core, we're about hospitality. So we want to ensure that guests feel the humanity of the team when we deliver a safe restaurant experience. And guests can expect our team members to continue wearing masks and gloves, but we think this is a shared responsibility. And so, you know, many of us are familiar with the signage, no shoes, no shirt, no service. We're going to be communicating in a practical, relatable way: no shoes, no shirt, no mask, no kava. And we ask that our guests really respect the guidelines, not just for our team members' health, but for their own health and well-being. And then we've also created a new cleaning concierge role that's going to be dedicated to the dining rooms as we reopen them, to frequently clean high contact surfaces as well as our dining room tables and chairs after each use.
So, Brett, it sounds like that's quite an effort in each one of these things. But even with all that, there's going to be, obviously, we're going to be out in the world. There's going to be some risk. Talk a little bit more specifically what you're doing to keep your team members safe in this environment as a key part of your company and a key part of serving your customers.
Yes, we're focused on an experience that really, again, combines safety and hospitality. So we've completely redesigned our training programs to incorporate COVID-related procedures, and that includes a COVID compliance scorecard to really give our restaurant leaders and teams a clear understanding of what success looks like on this front and help them build their muscle memory of these new procedures. Some other aspects include daily health log and temperature checks. We're currently testing even a facial recognition version of this in one of our California locations. And then pre-COVID, we had a really robust paid sick leave policy in place to encourage team members to stay at home at the first signs of illness. We've since enhanced that with 14-day emergency pay for any team member that tests positive or needs to be quarantined. And then another aspect that we recently rolled out is crisis bonus pay. So it's equivalent to a 10% increase of the average wage that our frontline team members have worked over the past 2 months. And then for our furloughed team members, we've put a profit sharing program in place as we reopen temporarily closed restaurants, even for contactless channels, which we reopened 10 on Monday. We were able to rehire 100% of the team members to staff those restaurants. And so what that does is it allows us to have really experienced, stable teams on staff to successfully execute these new safety procedures.
So, Brett, obviously, in the past 2 months, you've been an all delivery, all carry out business. Those were always parts of Cava's business. How do you see, as a leader in this field, how do you see the ratio of dine in to carry out changing? What have you learned from this being in this all kind of carry out business, delivery business that's going to carry forward even once the location's open for dine in?
Yeah, I think what we've seen in the pandemic in many industries is that these underlying trends that were slowly building going into the pandemic have only been accelerated. And off premises and digital were certainly big building trends. And so what we're focused on now is access innovation. And by that, I mean, it's really creating multiple points of access to serve you on your terms, wherever you feel most comfortable eating your kava. And if you think about it, digital orders as a whole account for 70% of our revenue now. So 70% of our volume is coming through digital channels. And 2 of those channels that we've actually stood up since the onset of the pandemic, curbside pickup and delivery, account for 45% of our sales volume. So you see the massive channel shift, which we think will continue into the future. And going into this, we had existing off-premises digital kitchens dedicated in each restaurant. So it's allowed us to really ramp up that production quickly. And then I think you're going to see us continue to craft solutions specific to the community's needs, whether that's our pickup by car version in suburban markets or drafting new pilots in consideration of our urban office lunch guests when they do return to work how do we meet them in their new change day where it's most comfortable for them?
Well, great. Thanks, Brett. We'll come back to you in the broader Q&A section, but I want to move on now to Revolution Foods and Kristen Richmond, who's the CEO there. Revolution Foods is a nationwide provider of lunches to children in school, healthy lunches to children in schools. And obviously, things have changed a lot. As schools all across the country have closed, Revolution Foods has adopted to that. And since the shutdown of all these schools, Revolution Foods is now serving full communities. They're feeding children who are not in school. They're feeding the homeless. They're feeding other at-risk populations. It's been an amazing, amazing, heroic effort by the team at Revolution Foods. So Kristen, tell me how you all have done this, how you've gone from serving so many school children in schools each day to serving so many people at a time where hunger is just such a threat in our country right now. How are you doing this?
Thanks, Ron. For us, it's really about leaning in even harder to our mission. We've always, as you said, existed to provide access to healthy, very well-crafted, clean-labeled meals to primarily children across the country. And when the COVID shutdown started, we recognized very quickly that the need was growing, not only in our incredibly vulnerable children that were out of school, but also in their parents who were living paycheck to paycheck, and now many are unemployed, to homebound seniors, other homebound adults who are sick, homeless populations, etc. So we, what I would say is we've leaned into our mission harder than we've ever done so. We've leveraged our supply chain, we've leveraged our incredible menu design for very culturally diverse communities. We've leveraged our production facilities, we've leveraged our distribution. Thanks to folks at Revolution and folks on my team and others, we've really deepened our relationships with mayors and superintendents and governors and city leaders who needed more and more support throughout the COVID shutdowns, which has led to an incredible growth and incredible, produced, designed, and distributed over 15 million meals since COVID shutdowns happened.
So Kristen, that last figure ran by pretty quickly. Why don't you tell people how many meals is Revolution Foods going to serve this week?
We will serve somewhere between 3 to 4 million meals next week. We've served over 3 million this week, and we'll be on track to possibly, get closer to 4 million next week due to increasing the capacity expansion that we planned for.
Unbelievable. Now, you've also partnered with World Central Kitchen. Many people here around the country, around the world know Jose Andres, who's the founder of World Central Kitchen, great friend of us at Revolution. So tell me about how that partnership's working and what you're doing with World Central Kitchen.
Yeah, very, very lucky to work with Jose. And again, just a huge shout out to you and Steve and the Revolution team, because we connected at a dinner for CEOs and entrepreneurs, not 3 weeks before the shutdown started. And it's been an incredible work. It's been an incredible process partnering with the World Central Kitchen team. We are producing and distributing, designing millions of meals for primarily adults through Central Kitchen who are most vulnerable right now. And so we are distributing them into cities, Queens, Brooklyn, Harlem, Oakland, Los Angeles, Detroit, Baltimore, New Orleans, the list goes on and on. And Jose and his team are working with restaurants and others to produce more meals and distribute those on site. They've had incredible impact, and so it's been amazing and complemented the work we've done with the cities and schools as well.
So Kristen, I do a lot of speaking about COVID, of course, and the question I'm asked most often is, will school open in the fall? Will school open in the fall? So let's put that question aside for a second and accept the fact that some schools are going to open, some schools aren't. So tell me what the fall looks like for Revolution Foods in that environment, and also for the parents who are sending their kids back to school in the fall, what's the safest way for those kids to be fed in school nutritiously and safely?
Well, so there's a lot of uncertainty, as you know, around how the fall will roll out, and for that matter, how the summer will roll out when our kids are actually very food insecure. So we're focused on the summer, but as we get to the fall, a few things we do know. We do know that we have created with our schools and many city leaders a great roadmap to address this. So we know that we can implement the proper safety protocol to produce and distribute meals. We know that in schools, options like eating in classrooms can be very effective to avoid cafeteria large groups. We are, working collectively with our school to design packaging formats that work for breakfast, lunch, and supper, frankly, that can be served in classrooms. We know that social distancing is going to be a huge part of what happens. And so, schools may be on an alternating schedule and will work to be flexible. We also know that it's probably going to be a staggered, start, potentially stop in regional areas that are impacted by more shutdowns. So implementing a lot of the flexibility that we've seen in this initial set of COVID shutdowns is going to be critical for the fall. And we feel like we've got a pretty good roadmap to build from, but it's all about scenario planning and working collaboratively.
Well, it's great, Kristen. And again, on behalf of everyone, thank you for what you and your team are doing to help so many people at this really critical and difficult time. I want to move on now to our third CEO on this panel, Ryan Simonetti, who's the CEO and co-founder of Convene, which is a company that designs and services premium places to work, meet, and host inspiring events. If Kristen's mostly focused on children, Ryan's, of course, mostly focused on adults, different ways in which people gather and are going to have to gather in this new world. When the pandemic hit, Convene closed all of its meeting locations. And this week, Convene released the operating standards it's going to use when it reopens. And I know I spent some time with the Convene team. This was really an incredibly labor-intensive effort to think through all these hard questions. It's been a really impressive product. So Ryan, when people are ready to come back for meetings, for gatherings in a Convene space, what about that will look and operate differently than it did before?
Yeah, and Ron, thank you for your support and putting an extra set of eyes on the plan. We really appreciate it, and your feedback was extremely insightful. So first, thank you for that. It's a really complex situation, and the way that we've been thinking about it is you have to actually break it into two components. The first is the health and safety of our team and our clients, and a lot of the things that Brett was talking about that they're doing at CAVA are similar to the things ultimately that we're doing to keep, especially our employees safe and our clients safe. The second is, what do we have to do to start to create enough, what I would think about as psychological safety for people to actually be willing, not just to come back and gather for meetings and conferences and events, but also just to come back to the office. A big part of our business is running hospitality and amenity services in office buildings. And then we also have a substantial workplace product where we design, build, and run office environments, both for enterprise companies as well as high growth companies. I would say the psychological safety piece of this is harder for us and probably even more complex than what we need to do to create environments that can welcome people back in a safe and healthy way. And the way that we're thinking about that is there's pre-arrival, which are what are all the things that we have to do in advance of either people coming back to the office or meeting attendees showing up for a meeting. There is the arrival experience, which is the welcome, and how do we actually get you either into a building or into one of our spaces. And then there's what are all the things that we have to do to make it not just a safe experience, but one that feels like hospitality, right? And each of those has its own unique set of challenges. On the pre-arrival process, we're doing two things. One is creating a disclosure, both for workplace customers as well as meeting customers, where they have to answer a series of questions and validate their own temperature, if they've been sick, if they tested positive, so that we have that information. And without that, they wouldn't ultimately be allowed clearance on site. And so we're working with our partners at Eden Health on both testing as well as contract tracing to further support, especially our workplace customers. There's then the arrival experience, which is how do I safely get you into a space, and what are the protocols to make sure that people that might be positive don't enter the space. And so for that, we're doing all the things that you'd imagine, maintaining social distancing, rethinking our arrival sequencing so that we almost phase the arrival of meeting guests and attendees and workplace customers so that we can maintain social distancing through the welcome experience. And then we are going to have contactless kiosks that will do temperature checking upon arrival. Now, once you get into the facility, it's really around rethinking, I'd say, a few key areas. The first is around cleaning and sanitation standards, which we are retraining our team to be doing increased surface cleaning. We're also increasing both daily deep cleaning as well as weekly deep cleaning, including electrostatic, to keep our spaces as clean and as safe as possible. The second thing is around redesigning our spaces to allow for appropriate distancing, right? And that's both within our meeting spaces, our workplaces, as well as our common areas. And that's really about rethinking where furniture goes and how can we create better spacing and distancing within our spaces. And then the last thing, which is really complex, which is how do you deliver a hospitality experience that feels human, feels genuine and authentic? And that means we're rethinking the way that we serve, we're rethinking how we prepare our food, how we package it. The idea of a buffet or dropping a plated lunch at a meeting, an event for the next 12 to 18 months is not going to happen. And so we're actually deploying individual bento boxes with individual wares to really rethink the way that we deliver hospitality, and then having to retrain our teams on an entirely new way of delivering a hospitality standard. And our hope is that if you can string those three things together, that you can start to create some sense of psychological safety that will start to convince people that it's okay to come back. And internally, we're calling it like a meeting in a bubble or an office in a bubble. And how do we create that type of sense of safety and security, knowing how dynamic and challenging the situation really is?
So Ryan, one issue is going to be that some people have special risks, may not be either, they may not feel comfortable or they may not be actually safe to go to meetings. You guys are pioneering this idea of hybrid meetings, virtual meetings. How's that going to work?
Yeah, look, I think as entrepreneurs in particular, when faced with a challenge, you have a few options. And one of those is, are you going to innovate your way out of it? And, you know, I think that there's such an opportunity where some of these really big trends that probably were 5 to 10 years in the making, and in particular around the adoption of remote work, around virtual conference participation, trends that we thought were going to take 5 to 10 years to happen have just been adopted literally in 90 days. And so as a platform, we're saying, hey, what are all these things that we do really, really well, our capabilities, our competencies? We know that meetings aren't ever going to go away. I mean, even this event that we're hosting today, at a minimum, the presenters, we would like to be in the same room together, right? And the facilitators would be. So when we think about the future of meetings, we know for a fact for the next 12 to 18 months that the idea of having 100 people in a meeting room at the same time is not going to happen. But could the 10 of us and the technology support of this meeting, could that happen in a really safe, convenient environment where we could produce that event live and then virtually distribute that content through simulcast and webcast to a virtual audience? And that's really what hybrid is all about for us, is a super safe, smaller on-site physical experience that then gets broadcasted and produced at a super high quality level to virtual participants that get to join it. And what that really is for us is it's less about the technology, it's about the human support behind the technology, which is what Convene has always been about.
Thank you, Ryan. We're going to move on to our fourth panelist. Before I do, I just want to remind everyone, we're going to extend a bit beyond 1:30 here. We're taking your questions. Once I finish my dialogue with Will, I'll put some questions to the group. So if you have questions, feel free to submit them using the Q&A function. I'll pick a few of those and give them to the panel. We'll go a little bit past the 1:30 mark to do that as well. Okay, so our last panelist is Will Lucas, the founder and CEO of Mint House, which is a tech-enabled accommodations company designed particularly for business travelers. At Revolution, we'd like to say that Mint House is the best parts of a hotel without the worst parts of a hotel, and the best parts of Airbnb without the worst parts of Airbnb. But I'm not really sure that's how Will would describe it. Anyway, the hotel industry's been obviously hard hit. The accommodation industry hard hit by COVID, by the lack of travelers. We think the businesses like Mint House are going to be the preferred option as people start to travel again, and when people need to travel. There is some essential travel always. So, Will, what does Mint House offer that makes it safer than, say, other hotels than hotels or other kinds of short-term rentals?
Thanks, Ron. Yeah, we believe that we are actually very well positioned relative to the traditional hotel and relative to your typical short-term rental or Airbnb operation. So first, as you compare us to a traditional hotel experience requires a number of face-to-face touch points, starting with the check-in process, which of course is not ideal for a social distancing world. Furthermore, if you think about the hotel room, it was really designed with two functions in mind. It's a place for you to sleep. It's a place for you to shower and get ready and head out into the outside world. It's not really a place that you want to spend any time or can perform, many functions well in. So as you contrast that to Mint House, we have designed a fully end-to-end contactless process. So that means digital check-in, digital checkout, digital concierge services. We actually offer customized fridge stocking. You can pick out the groceries that you want on the app or via an SMS link, which are waiting in the fridge upon arrival. And then when you get in the room, it's a place that provides a number of different amenities. It's a place where you can actually spend time where you want to spend time. So whether you want to cook or eat, or work comfortably on a spread out dining room table, or relax on the couch and watch Netflix, or use the washer dryer. It's a very different experience than your traditional hotel. And as you compare us to a short-term rental, I think there's always been a consistency and reliability problem with your average short-term rental, your average Airbnb. And that's only been amplified during this time, because you really can't know for sure that the proper cleaning protocols were followed by some independent operator, and we can provide that trust and that guarantee. And so interestingly, we've been able to parlay these advantages to industry-leading occupancy levels. And so around mid-March, when the pandemic was really taking hold of the United States, we saw mass cancellations. We saw bookings pretty much fall off a cliff. At the end of March, we were looking at an April with occupancy in the single digits. So consistent with what the broader hotel space is seeing today. By the end of March, we were able to drive our occupancy by the end of April, we had been able to drive our occupancy to over 50%. So we ended the month of April with 52% occupancy. For the month of May, we're currently at 63% occupancy. We've been able to do that by driving longer term stays. So our average nightly stay was 3 nights in February. It's now over 21 days. And we've been targeting pockets of demand that have been created in response to this crisis. So that includes traveling medical professionals, traveling nurses, displaced university students, but also our corporate partners that have shut down their offices and have employees that can't work effectively at home because they have kids or some other reason, and they're using our spaces as workspace during the day. So really, I think we've been able to communicate those advantages effectively to the market and to these new pockets of demand to see those levels of occupancy.
So Will, first of all, I just want to emphasize a couple of things you said. One advantage of Mint House is the contactless check-in, contactless groceries, your ability to prepare your own food in your own space. And so just really reducing a number of the interaction touch points from the travel experience. All those things have always been true about Mint House. What things are you doing in addition to that or differently now to really make the experience safer than ever?
Yes, so this is interesting. The broader question about cleaning is something that we almost were never asked by any of our stakeholders, and now it's a question that we're getting across the board. So, but for good reason. And so we do take this very, very seriously. This is people's health we're talking about. And so we have implemented an enhanced cleaning procedure across our entire portfolio that started with retraining all of our employees around a 64-point cleaning protocol. All of our staff are now wearing gloves and masks at all times. Generally, we're following a clean first, disinfect second protocol, which effectively means we are cleaning every surface twice. We have changed some of the disinfectants we're using to be EPA approved. We're actually also in the late stages of reviewing several new technologies, including protective coatings that actually lay on the surface and prevent viruses and bacteria from landing after you have, from living on the surface after you have cleaned it, to electrostatic sprayers, but also some pieces of equipment that filter the room and are proven to kill viruses and bacteria that are in the air. And so I would say, interestingly, but probably not surprising, that this is one of the first questions that all of our corporate partners have been asking us. It's one of the first questions that all of our prospective corporate partners have been asking us. And it seems we've been able to answer this. In the last 3 weeks, we've actually been able to sign up 6 Fortune 100 companies, complete with customized pricing proposals. So that would be more Fortune 100 companies than we have ever signed in a period like that in the history of Mint House. We've got a big pipeline of another 25. So some of these corporations are specifically citing not only these enhanced cleaning procedures that we've put in place, but also just the relative safety of the model that I discussed before.
Well, thank you, Will. And again, I think also for the number of healthcare workers you're putting up, the number of displaced people you're putting up, you guys have done really great service in the course of this. I want to go now to kind of questions that we've gotten from our listeners, our viewers, our Zoomers, and just put these questions to each of you and give you each a chance to comment. And I want to start with this question that several of you kind of made reference to, but I want to give you a chance to drill down on it. A lot of what you're seeing now are trends that existed before the epidemic, but that have been accelerated by it. What do you think those trends are in your business? And do you think those trends are going to last after this crisis passes? So Brett, I'll start with you and just kind of go down the line.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. It's clear the restaurant experience will most certainly evolve to accommodate the shift in consumer behavior and mindset. And that's really this idea that we were already building upon, meeting people where they are. And that's through all of our different types of digital and contactless channels. And so what that does to our in-store restaurant will likely dedicate more production space in addition to what we already have for those off-premises channels, and continue to lean into and invest in different features and tools of digital ordering, whether it's on our own Kava app or our web-based properties, and then have that portfolio of things like curbside, pick up by car, digital order and pick up in store, and delivery, whether it's within our app or potentially through a marketplace partner.
Okay, Kristen?
I would say one of the trends that we were starting to see, but we've seen accelerate, is the concept of food as medicine, which is just such an important concept for our country. And we're seeing cities like New York, cities like San Jose actually start to invest in not just kind of basic shelf-stable meals for families, but actually multi-day fresh meal kits for families who are vulnerable and are most at risk in this pandemic. And I see that continuing given the data around the importance of not just nutrition, but quality nutrition as it pertains to the wellness of our communities. And it's exciting to be on kind of the front line of that innovation right now at scale.
Great. Ryan?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest trend is really around the future of work and the way that companies continue to consume real estate, which was trending quickly towards outsourcing. And I think that ultimately accelerates because, right or wrong, the cost and complexity of operating space and delivering a great experience, whether you're an occupier or a landlord, has just increased exponentially. And as a company, we think we're very uniquely positioned to leverage our platform and our capability, not just to create kind of outsourced, flexible, convenient environments, whether it's for meetings or workplace, but also to leverage our design, our services platform, and our technology to actually manage space on behalf of occupiers. And so we're launching a Buy Convene platform, which is really a services platform for corporate users to help us manage their workplace experience. And then we are leveraging our digital platform to better support at-home and remote work. We think that there's a real opportunity as more and more companies commit to a larger percentage of their employees working virtually to create kind of a technology-enabled engagement and services platform to better support at-home and remote work.
Will?
Yes, we believe there will be an acceleration of the adoption of technology-powered operations at hotels. So, we've always thought that in a world with Uber and Seamless Grubhub, that the process of waiting in line to check in at a hotel was outdated and certainly on its way out over the next X number of years, and that process will certainly be expedited. I think the same goes for the physical concierges. We believe that there's no need to have someone waiting in the lobby available to look on Yelp on your behalf when we can provide that through your phone from our digital concierge services. Even the 24/7 kitchen staff in the hotels that are available for room service, we think that will ultimately be replaced. It's our hope that future developers and owners of real estate we'll be looking to implement operators that are already doing that and can do that well.
That's great. So all of you have demonstrated on this presentation and through your work great qualities of leadership in this industry. But the thing about the hospitality industry is it's a people business. So you have to take what you believe and translate that to your teams and to the people who implement this every day in your companies. I want to ask you each about how, and particularly when the stakes of this are so high of getting it right, life and death stakes, sickness, illness stakes, reputation stakes, how are you taking the messages you talked about today out of your own mouths and really building it into your teams, building it into your companies, making this part of your company culture going forward? Maybe this time I'll go in reverse order. I'll start with you, Will, and work back through the lineup.
Certainly. Yeah. So I think as a startup, we're dealing in uncertainty on a regular basis. So I think we're generally pretty good as a group. The magnitude of this type of uncertainty is on a different level, really an unprecedented level. So what we have done is really increase dramatically the speed with which we communicate across the organization. So that means daily meetings across all departments. It means daily intra-team meetings. It means regular communications with the board, much more frequent communications with the board. And that's because information has been changing so rapidly. So, the reality of our environment, new information comes out so much more quickly than it does during normal times. Plus, we are implementing, different parts of our business and adjusting and pivoting in certain ways.
Great. Ryan?
Yeah, I think you're picking up on Will. Transparency and communication are so critical right now to maintain trust, not just with your employee base, but also externally with your stakeholders. And I think a big part of that is being a realist and being candid about what's working, what's not working, what you know, what you don't know. And I think because we've done such a great job of doing that, it's allowed us, even in a really stressful situation where there's a tremendous amount of fear and anxiety, even within our own employee base, that we've been able to maintain trust. The second thing is, I always say you can't lead from the back. And I think as an organization, we were the first to close our locations. We were the first to reach out to our landlord partners to restructure our deals. We were the first to reach out to Goldman Sachs and say, hey, we've got a problem. We need to restructure our credit facility. We were the first in our industry to implement our new operating standards. And I think the fact that we've continued to put ourselves out there, have a point of view, not be afraid to have one and to lead from the front, I think that's given a lot of confidence in our team to kind of rally behind that strategy. And right now you need that, or none of this stuff is possible, because if these people aren't bought in, our team members aren't bought in, you're never going to be able to execute. And I think that's really where this next phase is. It's really about execution.
Kristen?
So similarly, much more fluid communication. We have a 9 a.m. meeting every single day with our entire management and director team. We have 1,200 employees, and from day one, we've been actually pre-day one, probably March 1st, we were getting out to our team and saying, you're safe to stay home if you feel sick. You're not going to lose your job. We have ample sick pay for you, making it safe for people, especially our drivers, our dishwashers, our production workers, all the heart of our company who makes this happen every day, making sure that they feel taken care of, recognized, safe, able to take care of themselves. We feel as a company that we are blessed right now to be able to serve and grow. And I think the urgency of that purpose-driven mission is stronger than ever, and it's being amplified throughout the company. So those are a couple things going on. We also made a tribute video to our team. I knew I wanted to do this in kind of week 2. I took a lot of time with our head of marketing and some incredible folks to put together a tribute video, just all about the team in the field and the partners who make this happen. And it's literally on loop in our facilities. So a couple things from my end.
And Brett?
Yeah, first, I just want to say how impressed I've been with our leadership team's commitment to lead with positivity and an adaptive mindset, which have been critical in this situation. And really, we've kind of focused on 2 areas. And one is really reinforcing our purpose and our why, our mission to discover the power of food. And that can be serving our communities in our open restaurants or our philanthropic efforts. We've partnered with Chef Andres, which has been amazing, the work he's doing at World Central Kitchen. We've produced over 100,000 meals for World Central Kitchen, or the 10,000 meals we've donated to frontline families. It's getting the team really rallied around that mission. And then the second piece, and I'd echo some of Ryan's comments, is really over communicating with transparency and realism. And it's not just about the business situation, it's also about people's personal situation. We have trusted relationships with our teams as leaders, and everyone's in this same boat within the pandemic from an impact standpoint. And personally, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of noise in the environment. And we have long-term existing relationships where we've tried to give them some of that fact-based information as it comes in about the pandemic as a whole, about financial markets, and give them some perspective and comfort to help guide them through this personally, not just professionally. And none of us have a map for this, but we do have our compass heading, and that's taking care of our guests and our team members, and sticking with that direction's really helped us navigate the change.
That's great, Brett. Thank you. Thank you all. We've kept everyone late. We're going to wrap this up. I want to first of all say just thanks to all 4 of our panelists. Reminds me why I'm proud to be part of the Revolution family, to see these great leaders thinking hard about these difficult questions, trying to do right by their communities, right by their workers, right by the safety issues here. So thank you to Brett, Kristen, Will, and Ryan for participating today. I want to say this is the first of a couple of these programs we're going to do. Our next one is next Friday, May 22nd at 12 noon, on the question of sports in the era of COVID. Our guests then are going to be Ted Leonsis, who's a partner of Revolution and also the majority owner of several Washington, D.C. sports teams, and the Washington Capitals, whose clock is behind me. And we're going to be joined also by Jason Robbins, who's the CEO and founder of DraftKings, another Revolution portfolio company, who is trying to bring interesting new technologies and choices of ways to enjoy sports through gaming. So with that, I just want to thank everyone for participating. I hope we'll see many of you next Friday. Thank our participants, our panelists again, and I hope everyone has a good weekend, and please stay safe. Thank you.